All right, welcome to the latest installment of the Fragments of Silicon reviews. Different day, same shit. Um, um, I suppose that's not entirely fair because some of the games we have this week are good, like this one in DUSK 82. I guess technically titled DUSK 82 Ultimate Edition now, and apparently it's being screamed at us. Because no, those cap locks are from the Steam page.
Yep.
So, and a bit of an odd title to have shouted at you because DUSK 82 is. Now you might be seeing from the trailer footage. We tried to get the game to work, but it's having some full screen problems. That's what that's about. Like, anyway, you might remember if you're a long time listener, viewer of the program, that we reviewed the original DUSK game, God, 4 years ago?
Something like that.
Like, it was quite a while. I remember quite enjoying it. And DUSK was, I'm not sure if it was the first of the new wave of boomer shooters, but it's certainly one of the first.
Well, at least one of the better ones we've played.
That too, but it's also like, DUSK came out at a time where, doing a throwback shooter to the 90s was a rather novel concept. Maybe not the novel concept because you can trace the revival back to Doom 2016, but it's not like now where, oh god, there's a lot of boomer shooters out there.
Yeah, some good, some not good.
Yeah, in fact, we've reviewed a couple this year. See our reviews of Kerr and Nightmare Reaper for more info there. Because what we're talking about here isn't that. Because one of the creative forces on the game, David Zemansky, who apparently just really likes Sokoban, because he went up and created a demake prequel, which is amazing in and of itself because, remember, DUSK, not technically a demake, but in that same ballpark, anyway, but it's basically taking the concept of DUSK and putting it into Sokoban. And once again, if you've missed our conversations on Sokoban, we should really do a topic of discussion on Sokoban one of these days.
Yeah, add it to the list.
Yeah. Not this week. I got something in mind for this week. But, it's a game it's a game that shows up a lot. Especially in the indie scene and probably because outside of the challenge of designing puzzles, it's a pretty easy concept to put in game form.
Because collision is literally one of the first things you learn in game design.
Yeah, and that's actually pertinent to this release, and it's the Ultimate Edition tagline. Admittedly, I did not explore those particular features myself because I have never given a shit about user-generated content, and much less creating that. I know that that appeals to some people. Maybe when it's the creative, when it's the creativity tool set, SimCity and the I'm more apt to do that kind of thing. But when it's a actual gamey game, so to speak, I leave that to other people. So I couldn't really tell. I'm assuming that the level editor stuff works. Okay. But yeah, I will admit that's a bit of a deficiency on my part. But I'm not but that is kind of the extra bits on this. Because if the game wasn't good itself, I wouldn't be recommending it anyway. But I suppose, yeah, and that's the question. Okay, this is kind of a loony premise. you've taken a first-person shooter and you put it in a, box puzzles, and the question is, does it work? And the answer is yes. It works really well. In fact, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I think this is a good Sokoban kind of game to recommend to novices. Because even though it's a demake, turns out putting a relatively complex first-person shooter into your very simple puzzle game is going to make the game a lot more complicated. But here's the thing. It has the inverse effect of what usually happens in these situations. Instead of this game being really complicated, it's actually really easy.
I'm not seeing any first person in the clips.
Well, remember, I'm talking about the original game.
Okay.
Yeah, remember, DUSK. I guess you weren't here for that particular bit.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, DUSK. We reviewed the original DUSK about 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a first-person shooter. This is its Sokoban prequel, and yeah, it's a prequel. And you might be asking, okay, what makes this game different, more complex, easier than pure Sokoban? And that's pretty easy. It's the first-person shooter elements. That is to say, your goal isn't to get all of the boxes, or I guess in this case it'd be the barrels, into the proper positions. Your job is to do like you do in a first-person shooter and kill all the enemies. Usually, there are times when it's more just get to the exit, but you don't have the traditional voxel objective. And that's key here, because that means the game plays a lot differently.
So you just have to get boxes out of the way of things instead of having to get them exactly specific places.
Yep. That's complicated. That's complicated by enemies.
Well, yeah.
Because there's 4 enemy types in the game, if I'm remembering correctly. You got your zombie goats. I'm not sure they showed up in the original game, but zombie goats, they're your Goombas, for lack of a better term. Any sort of projectile weapon or explosion will work against them. And the next enemy type is really the workhorse of the game, and that's the trying to remember, the chainsaw guys. I forget what they're called properly, but if you remember DUSK, one of the first enemy types you come up against are the hillbillies with the hoods and the chainsaw. That's really the ones you're really going to be working against the most in this game. And here's the kicker. They are only vulnerable to explosions, which means the barrels I've been mentioning, that's how you're going to voxel the situation. You've got to move the barrels next to, have them adjacent to the chainsaw guys and have them blow up. Or you use the riveter weapon against them.
And the chainsaw guys are these little red things with the thing sticking out the side.
Yeah. They're invincible to the shotgun. So that's where the majority of the puzzly elements will come into play. Not the only, because the third main enemy type, the fourth is the boss. I'll get to him. But the third is the Grand Wizards, who are vulnerable to shotguns, but they will provide projectiles. And their projectiles can do the same as like your shotguns. Like Your shotgun can destroy trees. Their fireballs can destroy trees. Important to keep that in mind. One thing I do want to note about the weapons that was a bit unusual. I'm maybe even a flaw in my estimation, and that is there's no penalty for using them. That is to say, like when you move, a turn goes by. So you got a bit of a roguelike element in the sense that the movement is turn-based. But the actual levels are handcrafted. Everything here is crafted. And once again, that plays into the extra features.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. And the fourth enemy type is the boss, the final boss, who is not surprisingly Big John. Don't know who Big John is. I suggest looking up some memes about Dusk or Rise of the Triad. You know, I will say his level is really fucking annoying because you got this really bit crushed audio playing that just won't stop. And there doesn't appear to be any mute options in this game. I had to go outside the game and mute it that way. Because he's just not fucking shut up. And he's a puzzle boss. Because the other projectile weapons in the game are the magic crossbow. If you remember the magic crossbow from Dusk, arguably the most or the second most powerful weapon in the game, because the magic crossbow ignores all barriers, and it does so here too, and that does factor into the game design. And the final weapon is the soap. Once again, if you know Dusk and its quirks and memes, you're not going to be surprised to see the soap appear. It's only for a few levels, and it's kept its all-crushing might in that you can use the soap to destroy all types of things. Like the soap can destroy the brick walls, even the ones that don't have the cracks where you can use the explosives. Once again, and that does figure into the puzzle type. The other puzzly mechanics that you will encounter, especially late game, mines. They're like barrels, but instead of pushing them towards the enemy, you got to maneuver. You've got to manipulate the AI to tread on the mines, and the late game mechanic I really enjoyed were the health kits. Because what a health kit does in this game, it allows you to take a hit. So you got to use that in conjunction with the other mechanics I've mentioned. And I think that's about it in terms of the base elements of the puzzles. And so how is it all put together? Like I said, the base levels, they're all really well designed. And once again, mentioning because of the objective markers changing, this game is a lot easier than your typical Sokoban because it's not really about figuring out where stuff goes in a very specific way. It's more about generally figuring out how to kill the enemies. I will say there are a few levels where you've got to delve into the specifics of movement and positioning, but not many. And there are about 30 levels. So what that all equates to is a very short experience. I completed in about 3.5 hours. And it might take you a bit longer, maybe shorter, but I'd say this is about a 3-4 hour game. In terms of it, what the developer has put into the game. And that gets to the key of replayability here. That's user-generated content, because this has a full suite of creation tools, level editor, Steam Workshop. So it's one of those with potentially infinite replayability with the creation, uploading, and sharing of creator, user created levels. I'll admit, once again, that's not my thing, so I didn't really delve into that. But it's like, if you really enjoy this game, I would actually recommend going into that. If you're really worried about the bang for the buck element, because just like the base game is a bit hard to recommend, even though the game only costs $7. $7 for a 3-hour game might be a bit hard to swallow. Also, apparently, there's 2 retro ASCII games included. Admittedly, I missed those. I'm not I'm not sure where they're located. Like they could be like in the files. But yeah. Overall, this was a really solid package. And unlike a lot of puzzle games we play for the channel, I didn't get frustrated. Oh, right. Extra challenges. There are diamonds. Yeah. I did forget about like your score drains every time you move or delay a turn or something like that. It's not important. It's not essential to the gameplay, but it's something you might want to do for leaderboard purposes. I'm like, it's there. But yeah, I'd say one of the better puzzle games I've played for the show in recent times. May even appear in my top 10 of the year, or top 5. Any other questions, comments, or concerns over DUSK 82?
I think I'm good.
Nothing in particular. I mean, you know what you're getting into with the retro graphics.
Yeah. Or maybe you don't. Like, which is why we review these things.
I mean, if you look at the store page, you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, fair enough.
Because to me, that's
it's
a little
just,
bit hard to read.
Yeah. It's more like if you're a fan of like the first-person shooter stuff, this is not really going to appeal to them, even though it's it's a commendable job taking the first-person shooter elements and transpositioning them into a puzzle game. I couldn't say it 100%. Not necessarily works, but makes for an engaging puzzle experience compared to a pure Sokoban, where you really do have to think about things on the higher levels of Voxel, Sokoban, or whatever you want to call it. Here, you don't really get that kind of deep critical thinking. And I do feel that's important to point out. This is kind of and this is a weird term to use, but I think it applies. This is very much a meathead puzzler. Like I said, it's unusual to say, but it's like the object here isn't figuring out precise routes to make sure your boxes don't get stuck in a corner. It's about shooty bang bang in Sokoban. And, that's just a very different experience. Even though this game looks very much like Sokoban, or a early 80s Apple II game. Anyway, I think that'll about do it for DUSK 82. Be sure to tune in after the break, as Petty Fan will be reviewing The Immortal.